But that game on Saturday is going to be fucking minging.
And I looked at the squad and I just thought, there's a lot of players there I'm not that familiar with.
They are more fractured than ever.
This game on Saturday couldn't have been plucked out more perfectly in terms of theatre, with Eddie being coach of Japan, England going there playing against Eddie's team. You just know that he's gonna have something up his sleeve, or he'll have worked. He wouldn't have slept for the last 7 weeks probably prepping this game, would he, in terms of coming up with a plan and things. But
did he give anything away? Because you spoke to him, didn't you, Jim, a couple of weeks ago when you were in Japan? I think the interview comes out this week as well, doesn't it? Did he give anything away, like about the game plan or anything like that?
Not really, no. But I should say, because the interview comes out and it's going to blow up, I think, because people want to hear what Eddie says. And look, it's one of them, and we'll come back onto the game. But just on that interview, Biggs, I'm unsure whether or not I pushed him hard enough. I probably should have pushed him harder on a few different things, but I actually really enjoyed him. And people might not like me saying that. I don't know why, but I think, one, we miss him in the media for what he gave us, and I think people forget as well. Percentage-wise, he's England's best ever coach. Do you know what I mean? So I think we've lost a good one in that. But having spent some time with him in Japan, Biggs, I'd never met him before. Like, I've seen his behaviours, I've seen him coach, I've seen this, and some days I'd like him, some days I'd laugh at him, some days I was like, oh, that's a bit harsh or a bit out of order. But I wanted to make sure that I went into that interview by how I found him, because there's no point me going in being like, all right, well, someone's told me this about him, Hasker's told me this about him, they've told me this about him, an agent's told me this, or whatever. I wanted to go in as like personally and how it felt. And I really, really enjoyed his company. Actually, a funny story on Eddie when I first got there. So I thought he turned up late, but he moved the filming location to the other side of the park. And I was like, I know what he's doing here. He's alphaing me. He's letting me know that he's running the show. So I'm already panicking before the interview. And I think intentionally he's done that because he's like, right, this Hamilton lad, he said what he said on the pod, him and Goody pissing about and like, Eddie, are you okay? The Michael Jackson innuendos and stuff. I'm going to move the point of location. So before I even got to the interview, I'm already flustered, right? I'm like, Eddie, sorry, mate, we couldn't find you. You know, desperate to try and get you. So you're right. I think there was a few intentional plays there, but I enjoyed him. You know, we'll see how the interview comes out when people listen. I probably could have pushed him more on the press conference stuff. I wanted to. We kind of run out of a little bit of time, but yeah, I think he is great for rugby, whatever that means, and that's no influence on my career or as a player or any of these things. But he gave me a fantastic interview. He spoke about his regret in certain parts of it, and yeah. I enjoyed it. So that's on Rugby Pass TV, as is the game.
I will say I'm exactly the same as you, Jim. I can see why a lot of people don't like him, but I think I always think you should speak as you find. And whenever I've spoken to him before, after games or anything like that, I think he's got something about him, hasn't he? You can
speak as you find is a great term. Speak as you
find. So I think he's got. I will say a quick thing with him though. He's obviously like an intelligent guy as well, and he knows this thing. So I was at Wimbledon one year, and I popped out to the toilet in between games. And have you been to Wimbledon, Jim, and things?
I'd say now Rob hasn't. So
okay.
I haven't been to Wimbledon. I've been to the one in Paris. What's the one in Paris called?
Roland Garros. Yeah.
Roland
so
Garros.
Anyway, so like in between points when you're on centre court, you go to the toilet and you have to come back up. And obviously in between games, they don't let anybody on, so this doesn't interrupt the play or the players. So anyway, I've sort of gone to the toilet, and as I'm coming back up to wait on the stairs to be allowed back into my seat, Eddie Jones is on the same stairs. He must have gone to the toilet at the same time. And we end up sort of chatting a little bit and things like that. And when it comes to a bit of a point in the conversation where there's nothing else really to say. And he's obviously felt that, and he's literally just deliberately not said anything else, and it was the most painful thing. I'm thinking of like questions to ask him now. I'm thinking like, oh, so how's the wife, how's the family, all this, and it is painful. But I genuinely think he did that on purpose to make me feel uncomfortable and have a bit of a giggle to himself afterwards. So we'll say I enjoyed Eddie's company, and like you said, I think he's great for the media. But I do think it's this weekend is. I think England would be too strong, but it presents a really good challenge to this young New England team because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be warm out there. It's going to be warm. It's going to be, the crowd is going to be right on side for Japan. A lot of young, new players to test rugby. And even though you're playing Japan, Japan in Japan is a very, very difficult game. But that step up and the pace at test level, is different to what you're used to at club level. So it's a big tour for England, I think, because I actually think you look at, obviously they got New Zealand for 2 games as well. I looked at sort of the 2 squads, or I looked at the England squad, and I looked at what potentially the All Blacks squad could be for that tour. And before where you think, anybody playing in New Zealand basically ended up getting an absolute walloping 9 times out of 10, aren't they? And I looked at the squad and I just thought, there's a lot of players there I'm not that familiar with.
Well, Biggs, that is your own fault because you need to be watching New Zealand rugby. That was the feedback I got because I said the same thing, and that's with all due respect because, again, being on this side of the world, Biggs, and you know better than me, better than anybody. But in years gone by, you could name 2 All Blacks teams, like side by side, and you could go down that. And I'm the same as you. And yes, I've seen a little bit, so maybe I need to do my research. But there's a completely different look to this All Blacks team.
Well, I was just about to say, Jim, because the teams that I played against in the All Blacks, for argument's sake, you almost didn't have to know. You almost didn't have to wait for the team announcement because you knew it was going to be Aaron Smith, you knew it was going to be Dan Carter, Marnonu, Conrad Smith, Salvea, Ben Smith, and one other of whoever they wanted, Sivatu or whoever they wanted to pick. And you knew that the back row was going to be, or the front row was going to be Mialamu, Retallick, Whitelock, McCaw, Kieran. So all of a sudden, there is probably a little bit more on us to do in terms of knowing and seeing the games a little bit more. I admit that. But going back to the point I was making, I looked at both the squads, and I think there's a great opportunity for England, especially in Test 1, because New Zealand don't tend to start that well in those tests. They wouldn't have played together since the World Cup. Coming in, not having a huge amount of preparation time together. And I look at the makeup of the squad, and you look how many sort of Saints players are in the squad at the minute with England. And I think if you want continuity and you want to keep players who are full to the brim of confidence to put that white shirt on and grow a little bit more, I think there's a huge opportunity for England on this tour to get a scalp. What do you think, Jim? Do you think of this? Are you the same thinking, or you think that the All Blacks will be too strong?
Well, we were saying it actually. We were talking about it last week, and naturally, people in New Zealand think differently, and they've got a great fan base that support their team. And I'll be honest, where this season's been, I haven't seen a huge amount of their super teams apart from Crusaders that are struggling. A lot of their players are playing in Japan now, so whatever their fans want to say, they are more fractured than ever going into this, we call it summer series, their winter series. With Scott Robertson, I'm a massive fan of him. Some people forget as well, this All Blacks team made the final of the World Cup and weren't far away from winning that either. This is the All Blacks, right? This is the most iconic team in the world. And sorry, South African fans, I still believe that the All Blacks have that. They're at home. The last time they were at home in a series, they lost against Ireland. So there's a lot of pressure on them going into this. Like England, again, what we were talking about, me and Goody, we were trying to go through around the way in which they play. Like if they play an attacking style of rugby, have they got the tool and the minerals to unlock an All Blacks team like that, or do they need to go back to a more simple, clearer game plan? So really intriguing test match series down there. One of the best places to go and play in the world. And it is hard to call. So when the All Blacks fans were, this is ridiculous. It could be ridiculous, and it could be a whitewash against England, and the All Blacks cement their dominance again on the world of rugby, and they let people know that, under Scott Robertson, this 4-year build that they keep talking about is going to happen. But I go back to your initial point, Biggs. If you're saying that and you're a lot closer to the game than me, when you look at their team and the profile of their team, it looks completely different to anything I have seen, even in my generation. So this could be a blank slate for Scott Robertson, and it's going to be awesome nonetheless.
I am looking forward to seeing the All Blacks under Scott Robinson, though, because basically everyone who's been coached under him, anyone who's had anything to do with him, can't speak highly enough of him as a coach and a person. So I'm really interested to see how he goes. I hope he goes really well, because like I said, from everyone who spoke about him, just has got brilliant things to say about him. So I hope he does well in that sense. And I'll be really interested to see if he can take what he built at the Crusaders into that All Blacks team where they are probably, like you said, Jim, as fractured as they've ever been in terms of a start in 15 or start in 23, aren't they? So really interesting. But do you think England will be a bit too strong for Japan on Saturday?
I've got no idea. I've got no idea how it's going to go. I know the temperature there. Chatting to Freddie Burns a couple of weeks ago, he was like, the conditions are going to be horrid, aren't they? You fully expect England to win the quality that they've got. The Japan team, with now having Eddie Jones back in the mix, I just don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be one of the hardest games. A lot of them England players, it's going to be a shock, but that also puts them in a great position then to go down to New Zealand. So regardless of what happens, does Marcus Smith start at 10 and then you've got Finn Smith on the bench? Does he completely rest the Northampton players and the Bath players because of the final to give them more of a rest? I'd probably put them all straight back in some kind of guys. So if you imagine a team made up, I don't know, of an Alex Mitchell or a Ben Spencer with a Marcus Smith and a Ollie Lawrence in the centre and a Henry Slade, who I think will definitely play. Afewa Bosa is definitely going to play as well, isn't he? Because he was at Exeter. So you start putting that kind of back line together with any of the forwards that you want to put in there. They've got a very strong team. Like, I think England are in a really good position. But yeah, everyone's talking about the New Zealand game, but that game on Saturday in Japan is going to be fucking minging to play. That, and if I was getting picked, there'd be a part of me where I'd be a bit good.
Oh, that's 100% the one where you want to be on the bench for, just to see how it pans out at the start. You want to be involved in the game. You want to pick up your match fee, but you definitely want to just maybe see how it unfolds.
Oh, you said it 100%.
Pod. Rugby pod.